Alrighty, good afternoon everyone, and thank you for joining me over Zoom. And today's lesson is going to be focusing on British imperial legacies on the Rohingya people of Myanmar. And just before we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that Myanmar is also referred to as Burma. Burma is the pre-colonial name, Myanmar is the colonial name given by the British. So, last day, I gave you all a list of terms to familiarize yourself with for today's lesson. So that would be ethnic cleansing, imperialism, colonization, coup, stateless people, genocide, and secular schools. So first things first, we are going to do sort of a brain drain activity. And if you could each write down a word, a sentence, or a phrase, you can do more than one, and things that you know about British imperialism or not necessarily know, but want to learn more about, and concepts that link towards British imperialism. Awesome. So now that we've done that, this is the region that we're talking about specifically. So if we remember from last day, we were talking about India and West and East Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the presence of the British East India Trading Company in the region. So the British seized colonial control in 1885 of Myanmar. And this was because they wanted easier access to trade with China. So, once they got access to Myanmar, they can go right in through this sort of trade path here. And the region specifically of Myanmar that we're looking at is going to be in this western tip over here. So, who are the Rohingya specifically? They're initially from the area around Bangladesh, and they were brought into Myanmar by the British for labor purposes, and this was done because India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar were all considered one underneath British colonial rule. So they're a largely Islamic population, and this is important to note because Myanmar is actually largely Buddhist. And after Myanmar declared independence from Britain, the Rohingya were not allowed to go back to India or Bangladesh. And this is because after this independence, each of these places was considered separate. So that made immigration and movement between them all significantly more difficult. And the Rohingya, because of this, are currently considered stateless people. So, why are differences in religion a sore subject between the Rohingya and Myanmar people? And not also why, but what are some other factors that could play into it? What examples have you seen in other places in the world, such as Israel and Palestine? That's a similar situation. I'll write that down. So now, when we look at Myanmar and the Rohingya specifically, the government is actually refusing to give citizenship to any of the Rohingya people. And the Rohingya are fleeing Myanmar to escape communal and military violence. And it's estimated that thousands have been killed in this genocide. The Rohingya are seen as terrorists by the government and military, and that's because there's groups of Rohingya people that are starting to fight back against this aggression by the government and military. And the Myanmar military and government have actually been accused of ethnic cleansing by the United Nations. So, you can see that they go through a path here of cleaning through all these villages. You can almost trace it all the way right through. So, what role did British imperialism play specifically? Now, this is a very large topic, so this is kind of reducing each of these points to something more simplistic, but we're going to dive into each of these in a later lesson. So they removed the monarchy and monkhood from their prominent place within Burmese society. Those are those twin pillars that I touched on at the beginning of the lesson. And we see a rise of secular and Christian schooling, which reduces the amount of people who are Buddhist in the country, and it's a form of assimilation that's propagated and encouraged by the British who are ruling. And Myanmar was actually politically unstable for quite some time after the British left, and within 15 years, a military coup did take place. So that's the historical side of it. Next, we're going to be touching on current events in the region and how those are playing into things. But first, we're going to do a cause and effect chart in order to better understand why certain things happen because of events. And there's also some links for more info on the historical side of it as well. Thank you so much.